Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm Scott.
We're LA Fishguys. Welcome back to the older,
shorter, multi-part version of LA Fishguys.
Are you ready?
Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks since we set the new lights up. The tank has responded very well. In that time I made a point of cleaning up all the wires and adjusting the lights so that we can focus the lights where it was needed on the corals and live rock as opposed to on the glass. We did, as I said, clean all the wiring up. We'll take a look right now. Let's raise the lights so you can get a better view. So do ignore these wires. Got things plugged in for fans and stuff that are running off the power bars up here. These fans are used for cooling the tank. As opposed to a chiller, it's much more efficient that way. But I spent a fair amount of time trying to get the lights adjusted so that I maximize my coverage where they overlap, and at the same time keep them focused on the coral and live rock as opposed to on the glass. That way we don't grow algae and we keep the lights focused where they need to be to maximize my intensity and maximize my coverage. So, given that we use these articulating mounts, the adjustments were very simple, just loosen up and point as we needed, and everything worked out real well. The tank has responded well, the corals have responded very well. My par levels are up from what I was seeing then, and one of the reasons that I was seeing low par levels, obviously I have an awful lot of surface agitation, and when you look in the tank you see that I get an awful lot of shimmer effect, and that's caused by surface agitation, moving the light, bouncing the light around. So this is kind of the master control center here, and this is my power bar over here that is controlled from my aqua controller, my Apex aqua controller. I've got a number of things that are controlled off of that. Obviously power for the LEDs runs off of there, but also my evaporative cooling fans that I mentioned on top of the tank, those are also controlled from there. This little box here is the lighting module. This plugs into my controller through a little USB cable that actually plugs into the power outlet here, which is daisy chained down to another power outlet and daisy chained to the main aqua controller Apex frame. This is programmed, the lights are controlled through the computer. So I can log in either through the web GUI or through the cloud and modify my light parameters, whether it's intensity or color. We'll talk about that in a minute. But anyways, this hodgepodge of wires is everything that is used to control not only the lighting, the moon lights are also controlled by there, my fans are controlled through there, and also the automated feeder device is controlled through this hodgepodge of wires. It still can use a little bit of cleaning, but at the moment it works well, and so if it works, don't mess with it. Alright, so since we mentioned some of the things that are plugged in, I figured it'd be a good time to touch on what those items were. We have our fans here. There's one over each opening of the tank. And since it's summertime and things tend to run warmer in the summer, I have these set to come on at 82 degrees, which is about where my tank will idle in the summer, and they'll bring it down to 81.5. And evaporative cooling happens to be a very efficient way of cooling an aquarium. You are blowing air across the water, it causes evaporation, but it also kind of cools the surface of the water, and in doing so, it cools the water in the tank, and it works real well. I do have a chiller hooked up, but I've opted to set the temperatures on that a little bit higher, so as to save on power. And for the last couple of years, it's proven very, very effective. Originally, I did have these lights mounted to the light, or these fans rather, I had mounted to the light rack, but when we did our light change, I opted to clip them onto the tank here. Gets them a little closer to the water, makes them a little bit more effective. I also mentioned automatic feeder, and I do hand feed and feed my fish daily, but as a supplemental feeder I have this little device here that also plugs into my Apex controller, and once a day this thing will spin up and drop in some pellet and flake food that I have mixed in a little container. It's actually a kind of nifty device. This is where you would add the food in here, fill it up, cover back on. You can adjust how much it dumps out per rotation, and once a day this thing kind of pops out and we'll do a rotation and dump food into the water. just like that. Only it does it automatically instead of with my help. And I can set that to do it multiple times a day in certain intervals, as many rotations as I want per time. Right now I'm using one rotation one time a day. It's simple, and it's just something else to augment my feeding schedule and keep the fish fat happy. Since I talked about focusing everything where I wanted it and aiming the lights, let me show you how I aim them. We got a little articulating mount here, and we just loosen up a little thumb bolt here, and from there I can adjust the lights by the ball and socket thing here and focus them where I want and tighten it down, and it's really that simple. I mentioned earlier about moonlights, and effectively we've got 10 LEDs up here, the blue LEDs. But we're in a moon cycle, a lunar cycle now, and someplace on the horizon the moon is probably coming up. So based on the controller and the natural moon cycle, these lights will be either dimmer, off, on, full power, whatever, depending on whether we're half moon, full moon, and we're kind of a little over half moon right now, so they're at about 50–60% intensity right now, and when the moon is technically on the other side of the planet, these will turn themselves off. So they can be on at night, they can be on at the day, just depending on where the moon is. They follow the natural lunar cycle based on my zone on this wonderful round planet. We got the lights up. We've showed you a little bit about what's going on up top. It's time to put the lights down to their normal position. Gonna push the button here.
With Neptune Systems' new cloud-based control, Apex Fussion, you can control products from Ecotech Marine and their Radion LED with an ease never been seen before. Right from the dashboard, you get a graphical user interface that allows you to adjust the time, the intensity, and the lighting mode of your Radion LEDs. You can even use it on a mobile device, and you can add clouds and lightning. Also, it controls the Vortec pumps. Right from the dashboard again, you get a graphical interface that's very familiar, allows you to change the intensity, the time, and even the mode that the Vortec pump is in. And if you want to compare that to another pump, or even to the Radion LED, that can be done with these as well. All of this is with the Apex Fusion, and the WXM module from Neptune Systems.
He used to buy 600 gallons of ocean water every 2 weeks. Now he makes his own for a third of the cost. He designed, bred, and services jellyfish tanks on a regular basis, but has never been stung. He cleans some of the finest aquariums in town, but never finds enough time to clean his own. He makes 200 gallons of purified water at one time, then dumps a bag of salt into it. He has solved long-term hair algae problems using algae against themselves. He is the most interesting fish guy in the world. I don't always make DI water, but when I do, I prefer SpectraPure. Stay pure, my friends. Receive a $50 LA Fishguys discount on a SpectraPure Max Cap 90 5-stage RODI water purification system. Just call or go online to SpectraPure.com and mention or enter LA Fishguys coupon code LAFMAX50 to receive your LA Fishguys $50 discount. Reef Hobbyist Magazine believes that our hobby, our fellow hobbyists, and the animals in our care are best served by the free distribution of quality information. Reef Hobbyist Magazine provides hobbyists with critical husbandry information with an emphasis on marine ornamental breeding efforts. Reef Hobbyist Magazine is available for free in local fish stores across the country, or you can subscribe at www.reefhobbyistmagazine.com.
So we talked about the tank being controlled through the Apex computer, and there's two ways to manage that. You can manage it through your regular web browser via a connection to the to the Apex. It acts as a web server so that you can access it anywhere if you have it configured properly. They implemented a new feature called Fusion, which essentially is Apex management through the cloud, and it really simplifies management. In fact, I've become very proficient at programming the Apex and programming profiles, which are what you would use to create sunrises and sunsets. But Fusion does that all for you, and we'll talk about that next. So as I said, there's two ways to control the Apex. One is via the regular web browser through the internal web server on the Apex, and the second way is through the cloud. I also keep a webcam on it, and when you take a look at the screen, you can actually see LA Fish Guy Jim there shooting himself. So this is the internal web server, one of the pages of the internal web server, and we're going to kind of skip by this control interface and jump right into the cloud management interface. And this basically shows, you know, obviously your webcam here, but it also shows all the different outlets that I have plugged in, and my system is pretty complex. I've got over 40 different active power outlets on this system, which is a lot, all of which under control through this, doing different things, whether it's controlling lights, controlling pumps, controlling my mixing station outside where I keep my RODI water and my salt water, controlling a chiller in the garage, controlling fans, controlling dosing pumps or top off, controlling my protein skimmer so that if water rises in my sump, my protein skimmer shuts off so it doesn't overflow. There's a lot of complexity to my system, and probably a lot more than the average user, but we're getting off topic now. Let's jump over to the lights. So with the lights, there's two things that I control to change their intensity and color, and essentially again that's color and intensity are the two items that I control. So we're going to jump over to our control interface. Where is that on here? Kessil intensity. And we'll jump over, and it gives us this nifty little graph. Now my sunrise is set to come on at 9 a.m. in the morning, and sunset, or the light shut off, at 9 p.m., which is 2100. And essentially you create this little graph that you can, you know, drag and adjust points and, you know, change how the intensity goes throughout the day. I'm going to reload this page here because I don't want to change anything, but essentially it's that easy. For color, you can drag your points, you can add different points too to create a natural sunrise and sunset effect. Now you also have color control, and at the lowest point, or 0 on color, you're very, very blue. And at the higher point, all the way up to 100%, it's more to the white shift. So now if you look at the graph, I added in the second layer here, which the blue line happens to be our color line. It starts off very, very blue in the morning, and as you go up throughout the day, the intensity or the color shift changes in conjunction with the intensity of the light. So I start off real blue, and as the day progresses, within a couple hours, by 11 o'clock, I've reached my color, my daytime color level, which is more of a white that we saw in the tank a little bit ago. Now my lighting intensity kind of works its way up from 10 o'clock and then kind of curves over to 11 o'clock, and from 11 to 1 o'clock the intensity goes to its peak point, and right now I have it peaking at about 76% power. So if you were talking 100 watt light, that would be roughly 76 watts of power used is my max, and I'm in that max area for 4 hours. And then after 1700, which would be 5 o'clock, the intensity starts working its way down until you get into sunrise at about 7 o'clock. Sunset at about 7 o'clock, and works its way to 9 o'clock where the lights shut off. So effectively, it's real simple. You can drag and drop your points, upload it to the cloud then sends it to the controller, and it's programmed. And the cool feature is you can play. So if you make your profile, or you create this neat little profile, I can hit the play button here on the screen, and I'll do that. Go ahead and look at the tank, and it will go through the sunrise, sunset automatically as though it's playing this profile. Of course, it does 24 hours worth of lighting in a matter of seconds. So there you have it. That's the control interface for the Apex. That's how I control my lights and program my lights. Obviously there's a lot of other things that I control in here that we don't want to get into. It's very complex, but I wouldn't run a big tank without a solution like this. So a couple of the scenes while we were shooting this, you probably noticed a little small tank in the background, and that small tank is actually a visible, we'll call it a display refugium is what I refer to it as, and it's essentially a nice little tank here with some coral in it, and mostly things that take up nutrients. I grow algae in there, we've got some caulerpa in here, we've got different types of soft coral, I get some hair algae and some other stuff in there, and it's stuff that I pick out of here on a regular basis. And the idea is that as long as I'm using up nutrients, creating an environment much like an algae scrubber that uses up nutrients, and as it grows, I pull the stuff out and throw it out. I'm essentially exporting nutrients from the tank. It's proved to be very effective because I really don't have nuisance algae issues in the big tank. I run two refugiums. I run this one, which is my display refugium. Again, it's got different types of algae, some mangroves that grow remarkably quickly, a little bit of live sand, and stuff that I've got to pick out. And then I run a second refugium, which is under the tank, that has a lot of what we call chaetomorphia, or chaeto. And that is something that I typically will pull out every couple weeks. I'll pull out a couple gallon bags worth and give it away or throw it away if I don't have people coming over to take it out. And it's just means of exporting nutrients, creating an environment that is really tuned to growing algae. So on this tank, I use what's known as a max spec razor. It's an LED fixture that's obviously very thin. It is aesthetically pleasing. It's got a color spectrum that is controllable, although I don't control it through my Apex. It has its own built-in controller that allows me to give a natural sunrise, sunset, and again, change the color shift from whiter to bluer. And I keep this kind of more to the white to promote algae growth, to keep my mangroves happy. Additionally, because this tank backs up to a window, I leave the shutters open so I get some natural sunlight in there as well. And it does help, my algae grow pretty well. Well, since we discussed the refugium over there, and we're also on the subject of LED lights, might as well talk about the refugium down below. Again, part of my filtration system or my nutrient export system. But this system here, where I grow chaeto and some other algae, is lit up by these 10-watt 6500 or 6000K LED floodlights. They're very effective. They're obviously very bright. I've got 4 of them on this tank here. I grow some small mangroves in there as well, and when they get too big they end up in the other tank. But well, for purposes of this recording, we actually turn these on now. These lights run opposite of my display tank lights, and the idea is that by having lighting someplace on the system, it helps keep your pH stable, because typically when the lights go off in the tank, that's when your pH drops. So these lights run opposite of the lights in the tank. So for the shot, we turned them on. These are controlled through my Apex controller. We'll move these out of the way, and you can take a look at what grows down here. I, unlike most people, keep my sumps covered, and the reason that I do so is evaporation. I don't want it really humid under here, and as it is, the top of my tank is open, my display refugium there is open as well. I keep both my sump and my under tank refugium here covered up to help prevent evaporation and also keep humidity down. So we'll put a little light on here so that you can see what's growing in there. And this stringy stuff here is chaeto, and I've got quite a bit of it growing in there. I'll get in here every week or so and spread it around, and every second or third week I'll take some fistfuls out, typically a gallon or 2 Ziploc bag worth, and give it away to some fortunate person or throw it away. It's also a good place for things like copepods and other live shrimp, small shrimp, to grow, and then eventually they'll make their way out of this box into my return pump and get shot into the tank up above, and when that happens, it's food for the other fish as well. So I've seeded this thing with thousands and thousands of little pods to help facilitate their reproduction and establish a good amount of them for my system. Well, swapped out all the lights, cleaned up the wires, we've adjusted them all for the tank, we've gone in and changed all the settings. You followed along, hopefully you learned something as well. In the future, I'm sure there'll be more on my tank. In the meantime, keep moving forward.